it, but let's start off by saying, on a scale of really pleased to super dissatisfied, how pleased were you with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness?
Oh man, I gotta break this into two categories here. All right, because as a horror fan, I was extremely pleased. I was very pleased that Marvel allowed the horror vibe, the horror aesthetics to play out fully in this movie. And so on that department and in that department, very pleased. Very, very happy. Had a lot of fun watching it. On the story side, I wouldn't say I was dissatisfied, but I was definitely wanting more. I think the characters were a little underdeveloped, or it was just kind of a rehashing of the characters' flaws and the characters' plot arcs. I don't feel like we really did anything new with the two main characters, or the protagonist and the antagonist. I don't think nothing really special happened there, and so not that I was dissatisfied. I always love seeing Doctor Strange and Wanda / Scarlet Witch play out on the screen, but I was definitely wanting more. So in that it was probably in a scale of 1 to 5, probably like a 2 for me. So that's kind of how I had to break this movie down.
Yeah, and I'm with you on a lot of that. Now, me personally, I went into this movie really excited because I like Doctor Strange as a character, so I was really looking forward to it, and I'm pretty glad that I actually didn't see it opening weekend, and I had some friends who saw it and heard some things about the movie before I went in, because I kind of went in knowing a little bit more what to expect, knowing that this was a horror movie, kind of somewhat expecting the semi-plot twist that happens about a third of the way through the film. So I feel like going in with some of those expectations, I was able to go into it with a better mindset. Whereas if I would have went into this cold turkey without any of that, I would ultimately say that this movie didn't do what I wanted to have done in a second Doctor Strange movie. However, it pulls off the superhero horror crossover pretty well, and it's fun. Like, ultimately, like, this is a fun movie. It doesn't really feel like the MCU progressed a ton, even though we'll talk about it in our review. There's like a huge power creep problem in this movie, and it kind of had to resolve the way it resolved so that power creep isn't just a massive issue in the MCU. But overall, I'm pretty positive on this movie. I would definitely recommend it, but if you haven't seen it yet, I definitely would say just read up a little bit about it. Know going in that it's kind of like a horror light type of movie. It's not super scary. Like, if you're an adult, you're not going to be scared by this movie. Like, it's got a couple of jump scares and some moments that might make you jump out of your seat or not, but for the most part, like, it's not gonna be scary for an adult. Probably not one to take children like under 10 to. I would even say 10, might be pushing it for some kids, depending on how they react to scary stuff. But overall, my take on this is, like, we got to experience like a high budget B movie, right? Like, a high budget movie with all of the stereotypes of a B film. And it was fun. It's style over substance, absolutely. And because it is Raimi, the style typically is good enough to make it worth the watch. I would definitely recommend this to all MCU fans. I'm hesitant to recommend it to non-MCU fans, mainly because it's heavily dependent on WandaVision to get as much out of it as you probably should. But at the same time, it's like it feels very standalone. Like, it feels standalone, but it also feels heavily dependent. So it's kind of a strange recommendation for, like someone who hasn't seen all the MCU. And for me, I was lucky. WandaVision's the only series that I've actually watched on Disney Plus. So this is one I've actually seen. Looks like if I'm going to keep watching these movies, I should probably catch up on the shows, which is just so many at this point. It's ridiculous.
It's a lot of time. It's a lot of investment.
I think that Stephen Strange is the most interesting character left in the Marvel Cinematic Universe going forward. I don't think anything happened in this movie to make that less compelling, make him less compelling as a character. The multiverse aspect of this was handled in a fair way. I don't think it was, to the point of being silly or hard to understand. I think it was fair. It was easy to follow, even if the jargon in the film is just silly a lot of the times. This is a high budget and high quality B style of movie. And I feel like if you go in with your expectations being tempered, you're going to enjoy it. It's a fun time. And my takeaway, my final score is I give it a 7 out of 10. It was in between a 6.5 and a 7 for me, but I enjoyed it enough. I couldn't rightly give it a 6.5 because I just liked it a little more than that. So 7 out of 10 for me.
Ooh, that's a good score, man. That's a good score.
Yeah.
A lot of the same stuff over here. Just enjoyed it stylistically. It's one of those films in the library of Marvel that I think is similar to the second Thor movie, where they kind of went a niche within a niche, and they did not land it with a lot of people with the second Thor. For me and you, it was a little better because we like that kind of stuff, but I think this has a wider appeal because horror just in general has a little bit of a fan base that is wider. So I would definitely recommend this. It's a great summer movie. It's fun. It's goofy at times. Doesn't make sense at times. So yeah, I recommend it for Marvel fans. I think it does put some set pieces that are going to be crucial in future movies into it. So I think you will need to know it. But it might be one of those movies where, it's like, oh, yeah, that one person was important, but the rest of the movie is kind of irrelevant in the grand scheme of what they're doing. At the same time, it's one of those movies that's also just a standalone fun movie to watch. So I would give it a 6.5 out of 10.
Okay.
The plot really kind of drew it down for me as much as I loved it stylistically. But yeah, I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. I think also what pulled it down for me was the fact that you had to see WandaVision. And for those that don't have Disney Plus, you'd get the gist of Wanda, but you wouldn't understand her as in-depthly as someone who has seen WandaVision. I give it a 6.5 out of 10, or 6 out of 10. But I still recommend it, man.
Thank you so much for checking out that video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a like and tell your friends. If you would like to experience the full-on spoiler review, our hour-long episode of this, be sure to check out the podcast of Parallel Quest, link in the description, or head over to steellakestudio.com. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next time.